Hi, thank you for joining me again. So this is part two of the OCD talk in the context of the Dr. Michael Spivak Memorial Lecture Series. So part one was about what is OCD, and now part two is about the juicy stuff. What is the treatment for OCD? So the CBT perspective, just as a summary of what, the way that we conceptualize OCD, is that what maintains it is the avoidance. So it's an avoidance of uncertainty and an avoidance of negative emotion. It's also thinking errors, and it's, believing in a fantasy story about what is going on, as opposed to using one's five senses in the here and now. All of this will make more sense to you as I talk about each of these. So this is one of my very favorite cartoons from the Far Side. It's Professor so-and-so, Lindquist, I think, presenting on his brand new treatment for OCD, the brain stapling technique. Now, of course, that does not exist. And so, since we don't have that alternative, we have other alternatives that we know are effective. Especially exposure and response prevention, as well as medication. There's also cognitive therapy that targets the thinking errors that occur in OCD, and Karen O'Connor, who came up with a bit more of a mindfulness-based approach. So exposure and response prevention is really a fancy word for saying that the treatment is really about exposing you to your fear and not doing the compulsion. So that requires preparation, because you can't just, as you can imagine, you can't just ask someone, okay, well, stop washing your hands and, face the fact that you might get contaminated, and that's it. It's not as easy as that. Before you ask someone to do something that creates an awful lot of anxiety and to face their fear, they kind of have to know why. And, really, I think especially the treatment for OCD is one where you really need buy-in. You really need the person with OCD to understand what needs to be done, why it needs to be done, and to really be convinced that, the cost of the treatment is high in terms of what it entails. It's really a lot of work. It's not easy, but the benefit will be worth it, because right now the OCD is just, taking too much of a toll. So in terms of preparation, one is about, the first step really is facing uncertainty, realizing that certainty just doesn't exist about anything. I mean, there's many things that we don't question. We just take for granted that it's certain, just based on a feeling that we have. And that's a healthy thing, because, if we were to question absolutely everything, we couldn't really live. So we don't question that the sun is going to rise. We don't question that our loved ones are okay, even though they're not present with us right at the moment. And this is one of the things, so that there's this big name in OCD treatment called Jonathan Grayson. I will give you I'll show you the book reference at the end of the talk. But he will ask his clients, like, so think of your loved ones right now. Do you know that they're alive? And just to make people realize that actually you don't. And that's true for absolutely anything. Something can be okay one moment and not okay the next. So you never know with certainty. What we do is that, we feel as though everything is okay, and we take that feeling as a fact. I feel like everyone that I love is fine, so they are. We don't question it. But when people have OCD, um, it's the opposite. It's like, I don't know for certain. I feel as though it's not certain. So therefore, it's it's possible that it's not that way. So, for instance, I feel like I may have ran someone over while I was driving with my car. Um, and so that feeling then becomes a fact. Like, it's a fact that I might have ran someone over and I don't know it. So it's a little bit of a twist on, like normally we'll say, okay, it's possible, but it's not very likely, right? But with the OCD thought, it's the opposite. It's like, okay, yeah, it's not likely that I ran over someone, but I might have. And what if I did? And that anxiety and that feeling of uncertainty calls for certainty. And so the person will, go back with their car to go and try to make sure that they did not run somebody over. But, driving to the next block, you could still run someone over. So it's never quite, this is what keeps the OCD going, because it's never quite satisfied, that need for certainty. So it's like a race. It's like chasing after it. But really, you're chasing after an illusion, and that's what needs to be recognized. A feeling is not a fact. They often do correlate. We feel that everything is okay and everything is okay. But that doesn't mean that if you feel uncertain about something and you have that feeling, that you need to check and you need to chase some certainty that does not exist. I never watched the episode myself, but I had a biology teacher who used that in class to illustrate, how logic can sometimes go wrong. And she mentioned this Sesame Street episode where one character is holding a banana up his ear, and the other character says, well, what are you doing? Holding a banana up your ear. And the character says, well, I'm keeping the elephants away. And the other character says, well, there are no elephants in New York City. And so the response then becomes, see how well it works? And, so it's easy in the absence of something to think that it's happening because of something that you're doing, but it's not very logical. So you might think that your loved ones are being safe because you're doing a specific ritual, but really they're being safe because they'd be safe. Like, it's not related. So the odds will never be zero for anything, for good events and bad events. And so that really needs to be accepted. Really, one needs to sit down and take in that thought. Because really, the OCD mind will tell you that it's not worth taking the chance. If you think, if I hold this knife, I can stab my loved one, I don't want to take that chance because it's like way too big, that I would have stabbed a loved one, or that I'm a pedophile. I mean, typically they're fears about big enough things, but you have to realize that it's such a low risk what your thought is, but the cost on the other hand is real. Like, all of the time that you're spending thinking about that, all the behaviors that you're doing, so how it's affecting your well-being, how it's affecting your performance, how it's affecting your relationships with others. It ends up, I mean, especially over time, if one doesn't work on it, it can really grow and be very limiting, and the costs grow. And so you want to think, okay, what would you do without your OCD? And really think of the costs, because that's something else that will convince you that you want to do exposure and response prevention. And when it comes about that feeling that it's never quite okay, that you're never certain enough, and you need to do more, more hand washing, more checking, more to know, because and it's okay, what if I, this thing that I touched outside, what if I pricked myself by accident and now I have AIDS? And Grayson talks about this gun test that he uses, because people often actually know what is real versus what is not. And the gun test is very simple. It's if someone had a gun to your head and you had to decide, do you think that you have, that you caught AIDS because you touched a mailbox and I don't know, it was like a little bit rough, or do you think that that's an OCD thought and it's not true? If you had a gun pointed to your head, like most people with OCD would say, okay, I would choose, like if you forced to make a guess, I would choose that no, I don't have AIDS because of that. So really what you need to understand before even getting into exposure and response prevention is that the goal of the treatment for OCD is not to get more certainty. The goal is to live with the uncertainty. So it's really to take that risk that, yeah, if you don't wash your hands so much, and if you do go out, and if you touch things, and yeah, you could get sick, and maybe that's a risk that is worth taking. I'll talk a little bit later about adaptation for COVID, but that's the main idea. Like, yes, if you don't check and you've left something on the stove, the house could catch fire. Nobody can tell you that that cannot happen. So it's really something that we all do anyway, every day, all the time. Every decision that we make, we're taking a risk. You go outside, and actually you don't even have to go outside. There's risks in your house, but you get in the car, you're taking a risk. You fly somewhere, you're taking a risk. We're always taking risks because it's worth it, and because the alternative is worse. The alternative is to stay with your OCD, to be in your own world, and to really be trapped and limited by that. So exposure is, again, to the fear. So it's to what you're obsessing about. So it could be, stabbing someone, being a pedophile. It could be running someone over. It could be contaminating someone and causing their death, or yourself. And the response prevention is preventing the avoidance, because when you have these thoughts or images that you don't want to have, you do something. So you'll check, so if you have thoughts about a loved one, something happening to a loved one, you might call them too many times a day. So the response prevention is resisting the urge to call them. So the principles of exposure and response prevention, or the idea of it, Makes a lot of sense if you just think about it in a maybe more simple way. Um, I like to use the analogy of a fear of cats, just because it's more concrete. So I think everyone would agree with me that if you have a fear of cats and you say, I want to get over it, you're expecting that you're going to have to face being with a cat. You're going to have to face being in the presence of a cat and not running away. And so what we do is, have the cat in one corner, have you in the other corner, and slowly you'd approach the cat until you feel comfortable. So, you would make a step towards the cat, your anxiety would go up, you'd stay with it, your anxiety would go down until you're okay and you're ready to take the next step, and so forth. And with OCD, it's the same thing. So, you're having these thoughts that you fear, or images. And so the way that we want to treat that is to make that less scary, to remove the fear response. And so what we want to do is approach the thoughts until you feel comfortable having those horrible thoughts or the ones that you think are horrible at this point. So it's really about identifying what is the thing that is really scaring you, like what is the thought or image that you really really don't want to have. And I can already hear people say, I'm exposed all day long. That's what OCD is. And I would say to that you are, but you're running away. So it's not what we mean as psychologists when we're talking about treatment and we're talking about exposure. So you would agree with me that if what you do all day long is run up to the cat and run away, run up to the cat and run away, run up, like you keep repeating that cycle, you're not going to get over your fear of cats. That's not exposure. Exposure is really taking one step until you feel comfortable, but you're not going back, you're not running away. And so it's the same thing with these thoughts that you have. So you have them, and then let's make the thought go away in a multitude of ways. You're not just staying with it. And so how do you do the exposure? Some of it can be done in imagination, some of it can be done in vivo, like in real life. It really depends on the actual content of the thought that you have, or the compulsion, or whatever it is that you want, that you need help with. So for instance, someone who has a fear of stabbing someone with a knife, and they're, of course not handling any knives anywhere. They're like putting them away in their home so that they don't have access because they're afraid that they could stab someone. So what you could do, it's amenable to both. So you could do in imagination a script that I have a knife, I'm going to stab someone. Like it has to be close to what you tell yourself for real, like what the OCD script in your head, like you already have a script. So you want to take that script and write it down or record it on the iPhone and repeat until your anxiety decreases, until you can have that thought and it not elicit so much anxiety. And you can also do the exposure in vivo by starting with a small plastic knife and holding it until your anxiety goes down, until that's okay, and then get a real knife and then a bigger knife and so forth. And at some point you could even combine the two. So hold the knife, but also run through your script that you could, with this knife, you could stab someone, you could stab someone to death, you could stab someone multiple times. it's going to elicit anxiety, and that's the whole point. If it didn't elicit anxiety, you wouldn't have OCD and there would be no problem. So it will elicit anxiety, but the anxiety inevitably, that's, you know, one of the most robust findings. If you stay with it and you don't try to make it go away, it goes down on its own until you get to a point where you can hold a knife and you can have that thought and it's okay. And then at that point, you don't need to get rid of the thought. You don't need to prevent it from happening, because you don't really care if you have it. Same with, you know, pedophilia, OCD. Most often people, you know, will have the thought that they could be a pedophile, and then of course, you know, they'll avoid like children. And so part of the exposure would be to the thought, like I'm a pedophile, I'm a pedophile, I'm a pedophile, I'm a pedophile, until and you know, the thought per se will elicit a lot of anxiety. That's why you have it. It elicits anxiety and you don't want to have it, and that's why it keeps repeating. And so if you stay with it until your anxiety goes down, that's, you know, one step. And then going out and, you know, being able to sit at a park bench and watch children, again, anxiety will go up and it will go down until at some point with practice you're able to go to the park and not have this big anxiety response. The thought might still be there. The thought might still come to mind that I could be a pedophile and I could hurt those children, but it will be a thought without the emotional reaction that's associated with it. So again, in terms of the principles of the exposure and response prevention, it depends on what it is that we're treating sort of more specifically. So if it's, you know, a pure, what we call a pure O, a pure obsession, most often it's going to be in a script format. You know, so someone who's obsessing about obsessing, like the obsession might be, for instance, like I'm always going to obsess for the rest of my life. I'm going to obsess, and that's scary. So we'll work with a script. If it's more of a compulsion, then it might be more in vivo. But most often there's a way to combine the two using a script and in vivo exposure. You might also want to build a hierarchy. If you have something, let's say like contamination, OCD, there might be a list, you know, so going to the, you know, touching the toilet bowl at home might be okay. But touching the faucets in the hospital might not be okay, or touching the elevator button might be, you know, might cause even more anxiety. Or so you rank them in terms of what is, you know, most scary at the top and less down to the less and less scary. And then you can, you know, move up your hierarchy that way. So it's the equivalent of, you know, with the fear of cat, like taking a step, like taking it step by step, as opposed to going to the, you know, biggest fear right away. And this is the exposure curve. That again is one of the most robust things that we see in psychology, that, you know, anxiety goes up when you're faced with something that you find scary, but over time, inevitably the anxiety goes down. It cannot stay up. The example that I often give is, you know, if, again, someone who's afraid of cats, if you were to open up the closet, put the person, lock them in, within, you know, 30 minutes, like you'll hear a lot of screaming, but within 30 minutes, you probably wouldn't. And if you were to open it up a few hours later, the morning, I mean, you wouldn't do this, but just, you know, in theory, just so that you can imagine it, the next day, you know, they'd probably be sleeping together, the person and the cat, just peacefully with each other's company, because anxiety cannot keep going. And so here what you're doing is you're exposing, like, so the top curve is, you know, your first exposure. So let's say it's a script. So you keep having the obsessive image of your girlfriend driving on the highway, getting into a car accident. So the first line that you see at the top is, the first time that you run through the script, it's like a lot of anxiety is elicited. It takes quite a while of repeating until you can be with that image. And be at an anxiety level of 1 or 2 out of 10, where it's like, it's okay. Like I can have this image in my head and be fine. So the next time that you do it, you get the second curve, sort of the second highest, and so you see that, it elicits a little bit less anxiety, and it takes less time before you can be with that image and be okay. And then repeat, and at some point you can have the image come into your mind, and it's okay. I mean, it's of course never, things that we want to happen. But the difference between someone without OCD and someone with OCD is that someone without OCD will be able to let the thought go. Like, you'll have the image and it's like, okay, but you won't pursue it any more than that. But someone with OCD, like, the thought will really stick. And the emotion is going to be a lot stronger. And that's what we want to do. We want to, in a way, unstick it. So in terms of the principles of exposure, it's, always the same. I mean, this talk is about OCD, but it's the same with anything else. For it to work, you can't be avoiding in some other way, right? If the person who fears the cat is walking towards the cat, but with their eyes closed, not doing much. And so you want to make sure when you do your exposure that you're not avoiding in some way. So you're not, if you're exposing yourself to contaminants, then you're not washing, right? If you're exposing yourself to the thought that you could have AIDS, you're not saying, oh, but that's okay because now they have really good treatments. That's going to take you away from experiencing the anxiety and then being able to experience the thought, the worst case scenario, and not have that anxiety response. Now, that said, that's the theory. That's what we're really, really aiming for. But, in practice, if you need to, have a little bit of avoidance on the way to getting there, but you're very mindful that you're doing that, and you're very purposeful in terms of, okay, we're doing it this time, but next time this is what we're doing. It can be okay. So again, fear of contamination. If the first time that you're going to touch the toilet bowl, you want to wear gloves because it's going to, already just touching it with gloves is already very anxiety provoking for you, then that's fine. But, to be mindful that the next time, that's just a step towards. But it's not the goal, and it's not, you don't want to conclude that it's okay because you're wearing gloves, because then it's not a real exposure. Yeah, so, and it's different from cognitive restructuring, which is working on the thoughts, which is the next part of the talk. Cognitive restructuring is good to be able to, think about things more rationally. But while you're doing the exposure, you want to really focus on what you're fearful of, and not try to, reassure yourself by using logic. So, you'll do better with the cat exposure if you're really focused on the fear that you're experiencing and the cat, and really looking at all of it and experiencing that, than if you start to tell yourself, well, it's not dangerous, because then it's a bit of the equivalent of running away. If you're going to do it in imagination, you want to use all your senses, close your eyes. Like, the closest the exposure is to what you really fear, the better it's going to be. You might also want to add an element of uncertainty in there. I know that Grayson does talk about that, and definitely has validity. I like to do both. One script or one exposure with, this terrible thing is happening, and one with maybe, maybe not. It's just because, whenever there's a maybe not, it's a little bit of an avoidance too, though. Like if something might happen, then it also might not. So I think it's nice to cover both bases. So it's like, I'm a pedophile, I'm a pedophile, I'm a pedophile, and I might be a pedophile, I might be a pedophile, I have no way of knowing, I might be. So you want to cover both possibilities there, or both ways of looking at it. And exposure needs to be prolonged, repeated, same as with the cat, right? Like if you were to do it once, you're not going to get over your fear. It's really, every day listening to your script, or every day doing the exercise. If you're going to, touch the stove and then not check, or it really needs to be practiced. Now, modifications for COVID, it's not really all that different. What we want to do is just follow the guidelines and not do more. And if you have OCD, contamination OCD, this will be an exposure exercise because, by definition, because of the OCD, like you're never going to feel like it's enough. So it's about the exposure piece. The exposure response prevention is about, exposing yourself to the fact that, yeah, you might have the COVID virus somewhere, but you're not going to go through excessive means to try to increase your certainty that you don't have it. So you're not, nowhere does anyone say that you should change your clothes, or that you should shower more, or, there's, so what you want to do is really find out, okay, what are the guidelines? And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Nothing more. And it's not going to feel like it's enough. The feeling doesn't matter, though. So you can have the feeling that it's not enough. And you also have to live with the fact that the guidelines can change. They might not be the right ones. I mean, at some point they said, don't wear masks, and then wear masks. things can change, and that's okay. And you can also think about how you would handle the possible scenarios as an exposure. So, rather than have the thought of, if I have the virus, it's terrible, I need to do everything in my power to, make sure that that doesn't happen, as if you can. And so, you're going to just like go way overboard and let it consume your whole day. Instead of that, think of, okay, I could have it, my loved ones could have it. What would we do? How would we cope? And it's not, life is hardships. You can't live a life where all of it is you trying to prevent hardships, because they do happen anyway. And most of the time when something happens, you can cope very well with it. It's just worse when it hasn't happened and it's in your imagination, because you don't have the pieces of the puzzle. You're trying to solve it and you can't. And keep in mind that you can't control the virus, but you can control your OCD, though. You can control what you do. So the other part, or the other treatment that I think is good anyway, in combination. Like there's nothing that says that the two are mutually exclusive, just that you wouldn't do them at the same time, or you would make sure that when you're correcting the thinking errors that you're not just reassuring yourself, because then you're not doing exposure. So it's two components just to be done separately. So one thing is, this idea of certainty, realizing that you just can't have it. And that, though, this one you can do exposure to. This one is very compatible with exposure. That, uncertainty is there every second of the day. You never know the next second what's going to happen. And something that John Grayson says is, the only people who are certain are stupid. Like you need to realize that uncertainty is there. The anxiety equation is another way to think about what you fear. So it's that anxiety equals an overestimation of the threat plus an underestimation of my ability to cope. So for instance, if I don't lock the door, let's say that I forgot to lock the door of my home when I left. So for someone to break in, they wouldn't really have to, they just open the door. But for someone to come and rob, they would need, so there has to be someone who is a robber, and he or she has to be passing right in front of my street, like that, and that exact day, right? And then they have to spot, like out of all these doors on the street, they have to say, hey, I'm gonna go to that specific one. So many things have to happen for that end result to be obtained. And oftentimes with OCD, there's a big overestimation of the threats. Like if I don't lock my door, for sure someone will go into my house and rob. If I leave the stove on, the house is going to burn, and the neighbor's house too, and it's going to be all my fault. And if you think about it, it's really an overestimation of danger. And then for the ability to cope, what would you do if your house got robbed? Probably have insurance. You'd call the insurance company. Like, yes, it would not be pleasant, for sure. Nobody wants that. But you would cope. If there was a fire, if there was a flood, again, those are things that are really that no one wants. But if it happened, you would deal with it. And that's really the process of acceptance of uncertainty. That it's unfortunate that there's nothing that we can do to be sure that our loved ones are going to be okay, to be sure that our home is protected in some way, to be sure that things are going to be okay, to be sure that we're not going to get in a car accident, to be sure that we're not that the plane won't go down when we go back to flying. We can't. So acceptance of that risk has to be there, that things can happen, and if they do happen, we would cope. That's resilience. And so in terms of changing your thoughts a little bit, you can think of, okay, am I overestimating the risk of this bad thing happening? Am I underestimating my ability to cope with it? And in a way, you're also, facing the anxiety in that way. The reason, like I mentioned before, like you wouldn't do it during an exposure exercise per se, is that, when you're telling yourself that you could cope with this and it's not so likely to happen, it's also a bit reassuring. And so that's why I was saying they're, a little bit different strategies, complementary, but not Like if you're exposing yourself to your worst scenario, you need to be with your worst scenario and not trying to make it better. But at other times, when you're working on your thoughts a little bit more, that's when you can use these strategies. Responsibility is another big thinking like area of error or of overestimation, underestimation. So it's sort of this idea that you don't want to be responsible for having killed someone or set the neighbor's house on fire, those kinds of things. And so it's almost like you need to make sure that you don't do these things because you don't want to be responsible. It would be all your fault. But really, responsibility is about taking reasonable steps. It's not doing unreasonable things. And the other thing is that it's okay to make errors. You can't, if you, no matter how good intentioned and a good person you are, if you go through life, you can't do only good. Sometimes you'll do something that you will regret, or that will have a negative consequence, or you forget something, or my best friend's grandmother used to say that the person who breaks the dishes is the person who does the dishes. And so expect that at some point you will make mistakes, you will, and they might have consequences, and they might even have consequences for other people. There's not much that you can do. You'll just have to at that point be prepared to apologize and to make it up however you can, and that's it. And you can use the pie chart of responsibility as well to see, so for instance, someone has a fear of, not having turned off something when leaving the office. Well, is it only their responsibility? Or of not having locked up, or, different things. Like oftentimes it's not 100% your responsibility, though you might tend to think so. Another thought to be worked on is this idea that we can control thoughts. We can't. I mean, you can say, okay, I want to think of this, and think about it. You can control it maybe in that way a little bit, but you can't say, I'm not going to think of something. So I can say that in the next 2 minutes, I'm going to close my eyes and think of a pink elephant. And unless a big noise comes up, or some distraction, I might be able to do it. But if my exercise was in the next 2 minutes to not think of a pink elephant, whatever I do not think of a pink elephant, I mean, you already know what's going to happen. And so that shows that even an elephant, a pink elephant, is neutral, right? Like it doesn't nothing negative about a pink elephant. And already I would not be able to do it, to not think of a pink elephant for the next 2 minutes. So just imagine if on top of that, the pink elephant was this horrible, horrible thing that I really feared and feel like I couldn't handle happening. Think of how much I would be thinking of a pink elephant if in the next 2 minutes I told myself to not think about it. And in fact, when they do surveys of people, 90% of people at least report weird thoughts, and it is my contention that the rest are lying, because I think it's really universal. Who hasn't had the thought that they could jump off the balcony if it's really high, or they could not, or they could lose control of their car and just go and hit someone just because of some impulse of some sort. Or in the metro that you could jump, or you could push someone, or you could hit little kids that are crossing the street as you're driving. People, their thoughts, and it's just, if you think of how many thousands of thoughts we have in a day, some are going to be relevant and others are just not going to be. And some are going to be positive and others are just going to be plain weird. And it's just how the mind works, and that is the problem with OCD, and definitely in the development of it. Like if you have the thought, I could push someone in front of a metro, you're gonna think, okay, that was weird, and maybe I'm a little bit stressed, and maybe I need to take care of myself a little bit more, and that's it. So not much is going to happen out of that. But if you think, oh my God, I just had the thought that I could push someone in front of a metro, that means that I could, like what if I really do it? I'm gonna go to jail, I'm gonna have killed someone. Like what a horrible person I am to think that I don't even deserve to be in society. You're going to stand close to the metro wall to stay away as possible from people that you might push in front of a metro. And of course you won't want to have that thought ever again. Like let me not ever think about that again, because I don't want to do it. And that's how you're going to get yourself into trouble. So it's not really that. Like the distinction is, it's not so much that OCD, that an obsessive thought is an intrusive thought. Like, yes, it is, but we all have intrusive thoughts. The problem is really that you want to get rid of the intrusive thought, that you're saying it's not okay to have this intrusive thought. That's the real issue. And the last treatment component or strategy that I will mention is from Karen O'Connor, because I think it's an interesting point, and I have used it with clients in therapy, is that OCD starts with a doubt that's not always relevant to the situation. So it might be, sort of abstract facts, rules, hearsay. It's like, oh, I heard, like we all read about the cardiologist who killed his 2 kids and stabbing them, and if he could do that, well, I could do that. So it starts with a doubt, but that's not really like there you are at home with your kids, like why would you stab them? Like there's no real, it's really far from reality. It's a lot more into fantasy of, this is possible, it's happened, and you get sort of pulled into that. And what you really need to do instead is to go back into your 5 senses and say, hey, what's the situation here and now? So for instance, someone who's afraid of having hit someone with their car. Well, did you see anybody with your eyes? No. Did you hear hitting them? No. Did you get any movement from hitting them? No. So your senses are telling you what? You didn't. Like if you did, your senses would have sensed it. So it's about coming back to your 5 senses and being able to say, okay, that's a fantasy. It's a nice little story, scary story, but that's what it is. But in the here and now, in reality, which is sensory, it's not happening. And the last part, treatment, but not the least, medication. Based on the International OCD Foundation, about 70% of people benefit from medication or ERP. And those who benefit from medication see a decrease in their symptoms of about 40-60%. So it's meaningful. It's usually SSRIs, so we're talking about Luvox, Zoloft, Celexa, Effexor, like the usual Paxil. So all of those that I've listed here have been shown to be effective in OCD. So the take home after all this is that intrusive thoughts are not the problem. We have them, we don't control the thoughts that enter our brain. The issue is not wanting to have them and assigning meaning to them. That's how you get stuck. So you need to want to take the risk, because it's always, about something that's really scary objectively. But you've got to want to take the risk because it's worth it and there's no alternative. There's nothing that can make you certain. So given that, you're taking a risk no matter what you do. So you may as well, enjoy and have a more healthy life than to try to get something that you can't get, that, this chasing of certainty. And, oftentimes also, if you try to prevent something else will happen. Like, it's quite the illusion that we can control so much and get so much certainty. You can use Grayson's gun test to decide what is real. So if you're just not sure to this, you're trying to decide, do I have AIDS because I touched something, or do I not? Like, okay, if someone had a gun to your head and you needed to make a guess, which guess would be yours, and use your 5 senses as well. And exposure and response prevention really works. But in the context of OCD, it's something that needs to be continued and practiced a lot. And I'm leaving you with this quote from Jonathan Grayson. If you ask the question, like in the context of these, what if I get COVID? What if I hit someone? What if you ask the question and you run, it's hell. If you ask the question and you're able to answer the question, it's resilience. So that works across the board for anything that we fear, anything that we don't want to have. Facing it is your best way. If you just say, okay, let's say that it happened, because nobody can guarantee me that it won't happen. What would I do? And, be okay with that, with the fact that it could happen. And it's okay. In the meantime, I'm going to live my life and really enjoy it. So this is the book from Jonathan Grayson, but also on the internet, like he has a website, there's podcasts, there's a support group for people with OCD. It's a really, he's really a great, clinician, has done really a lot for OCD, is interesting to listen to. So I'd encourage you to either go and have a look at his website or get the book. And that's it. Thank you very much for joining me again. And I hope that you learned a little bit about the treatment. And I'll invite you to come to the question period that we'll be having on Facebook. Thank you.